The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
We are those guys. We hope to be your guys, bringing you the latest from the National Football League. And to switch things up, we're going to talk a little hardwood because Nick Ferguson, my Boston Celtics, are in the NBA Finals, taking over for your Denver Nuggets, who held the torch just one year. We're going to dive into that along with some of our usual antics. I think it's worth mentioning because people do come to us for football. Jalen Waddell signed an extension. The Cowboys aren't going to sign CeeDee Lamb to an extension anytime soon. Neither are the Cincinnati Bengals with T. Higgins, Justin Jefferson for the Vikings. About 30 seconds on this updated wide receiver mark, now costing about $28 million a year annually for a wide receiver too, but a special one in Jalen Waddell.
Well, if you put a lot of stock in the value of quarterbacks, which they do in the NFL, then you have to put a lot of stock in a guy who's catching the ball, who's helping them escalate those particular numbers. Just look no further than what the Miami Dolphins were able to do with Jalen Waddell. And the Dolphins still have to figure out what they're doing with Tua Tagovailoa. But if you're some of the wide receivers who have expiring deals, you're looking at Jalen Waddell and say, yes, we want the price to continue to go up. And I don't even know why, Alex. A lot of players don't get together from a positional standpoint and say, hey, listen, when's your contract up? When's your contract up? Let's help everyone get paid. Help me help you, Jared Maguire. A little talk right there. But
show me the money. Yeah.
Show me the money. This is great for Jalen Waddell. And the numbers and the money's only going to go up from here. It's not going to go down.
The important number is $72 million guaranteed, and that number goes up. We see certain teams. We've talked about the Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman and Jeff Lurie making it a priority to lock their guys up first. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown getting extensions this offseason. And listen, who's going to be more upset they didn't get the deal done first? Is it Dallas? Is it Minnesota? Cincinnati with their star wide receivers still playing on their final years? T. Higgins on the franchise tag.
Well, yeah, man, the whole idea is trying to get ahead of the situation. Usually this happens and people take this frame of mind when something has gone wrong, but it's the same philosophy that they have to take in the NFL. Like when you think about Dak Prescott's contract, I don't know what's taking the Dallas Cowboys so long. That should have been done maybe a year ago. Then you look at Justin Jefferson. Once again, like I said, the numbers are not going to go down. And for a lot of these teams, they have a salary cap that they have to, I guess, contend with, and knowing as though the salary cap is going to go up, but still at the same time, so with the players' demands as far as looking at maybe their contemporaries around the league and say, well, this guy got $50 million a year. I'm a perennial Pro Bowl, right? I'm the best guy on your team.
Right.
Fantasy dream and a nightmare at the same time. So you have to pay me. So hopefully Kwesi Adolfo, the GM out in Minnesota, is looking at what's happening with the escalating salaries for wide receivers and decide, you know what, let's go ahead and get Justin Jefferson done because you still have Jordan Addison, who's still on that roster in a couple of years. You don't want to be in a situation where you're going like, oh, which guy am I going to take? This or that.
Yep. Addison. And then, of course, J.J. McCarthy. You want to be able to strike while the iron's hot, and that quarterback is on the rookie deal. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about the NBA, but we're going to do it framed around the National Football League just to sort of dip our toes in, Nick, for our audience, see how we can do switching things up just a little bit because the NBA Finals begin on June, what's the math? The first Thursday of June.
June 6th.
June 6th. Beautiful. So the Kansas City Chiefs just went back-to-back winning Super Bowls. However, your Denver Nuggets failed to get to the conference finals. It's now been, nearly a decade, about 7 years since a team that has been the defending champions have actually made it to the Final Four in the NBA. Of course, we have plenty more examples in the NBA. My Celtics had won 10 of 11 championships going back to the 60s. You've had the Bulls three-peat twice. You've had the Lakers three-peat. You've had the bad boy Pistons, and LeBron repeated in Miami. But in this present day of the National Basketball Association, compared to what the Kansas City Chiefs have been able to accomplish, do you think it's harder now to repeat as champions in the NBA compared to, the National Football League?
Yeah, it's very difficult because I mean, in the NFL, you have free agency. You have guys, if you're on a winning Super Bowl team, they're going to raid your coaching staff. They're going to raid your roster. Guys are going to want higher paydays because I just helped you do something you haven't done. And that's win a title, and guys want to be compensated for that. But as far as the NBA is concerned, there's a couple of things you factor in. You factor in whether you're in the Eastern Conference or the Western Conference, the teams are going to get better every single year. And in the Western Conference, it is loaded. So if you are a guy hoping to win a title, you've never won one before, your best chance may be going to the Eastern Conference opposed to staying in the Western Conference. But also, too, and the Nuggets found this out. I mean, you win a title, you celebrate it, you had the parade, but that's a long season, which means for a short off season. And this is where injuries can actually happen. And we saw that happen with Jamal Murray and a couple of other players. Fortunately for the Nuggets, it didn't happen with Nikola Jokic, who is by far one of the better players in the league, but that's now being challenged by Luka Doncic, who is playing out of his mind right now. But these are some of the challenges you run into when you have an already longer NBA season that you throw into 7-game series, because back in the day, it wasn't like that before. It was best of 5. But the NBA is taking a page out of NFL book. Let's try to squeeze as much juice to that orange as possible.
Now, do you think that we always say we've on this program, and you hear it everywhere else, that the quarterback is the most important position for a professional sports team, right? Because they touch the ball every play on offense, at least at some point, whether they throw or hand off. But I sort of wonder, for a superstar like a Jamal Murray, or we'll go to the Eastern Conference, right? Jimmy Butler was injured. Giannis and Dame Lillard were injured. The Knicks had their slew of injuries, and then, I mean, they were down 20 at the time, but lost Jalen Brunson in the third quarter against the Pacers. Donovan Mitchell for the Cleveland Cavaliers. We could just keep going on. Is a superstar NBA player more impactful for their team's success than a quarterback is for the National Football League?
Yeah, man, because it's all about star power and marketability. That's just one aspect of it. But then the other part, which is the most important part, the level of production that you provide. I mentioned Luka Doncic. Just look at what both he and Kyrie are definitely doing. And you have a lot of teams who want to form these big threes, but they never work because you have too many alpha dogs in the room and everyone wants the ball. But in certain situations, if you have the right chemistry, each guy understanding the pecking order, and my success is built on your success, and someone can take a back seat, that's where you see a lot of success actually come. So you need some of those marquee players, because if you don't, you're going to struggle. Like, I mean, think about it this way, that if you didn't have a guy like a Jalen Brunson, how far would the Knicks have actually gone? Let's be totally honest. I mean, they have some shooters and some talented players on that roster, but once again, Jalen Brunson was the oil that greased the engines, and when he got injured, that changed the trajectory for the New York Knicks.
Well, they were toast in that game 7 already. I'll stand by it. I know they got within 12, but we've seen, obviously, your Denver Nuggets blowing a 20-point lead, but I still think that Knicks team was kind of, the engine had sputtered despite how much oil was greasing the engine there. So I'm curious now, because you focused, of course, on the Western Conference, and you started speaking to the greatness of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. I love how we're painting this as a redemption story. He just acted like an ass for the last 5 years, forcing his way out of Boston to Brooklyn, and then forcing his way out of Brooklyn. So I don't want to frame it as a redemption story, but certainly after not being able to play ball in a big 3 in Brooklyn, he's now not taken a back seat, but has done an effective job sharing the spotlight, where Luka Doncic is going off game 5 the other night, 20 points in the first quarter. Kyrie's a facilitator. And then Luka is not sputtering, but deferring to Kyrie, and he becomes the closer in the fourth quarter. When you watch this Dallas Mavericks team, either against your Nuggets in the regular season or after, the Timberwolves took it to your Nuggets, I know it was a 7-game series, but they were the more physical team. They showed the weaknesses in missing Jamal Murray and maybe Nikola Jokic at less than 100%. But the Mavericks just absolutely dismantled and clobbered the Wolves for all but one game, essentially that game 4. So what do you see in this Dallas Mavericks team that are they the hottest and therefore the best coming into this NBA Finals? And then we'll get to the Boston side of things.
Well, let me address the one thing you said when you were talking about Kyrie Irving. Once again, you have a kid, so it's all about
I
the
do.
sandbox, right? Who gets in the sandbox first? I get in first. All the toys are mine, and everyone else you just stay outside. That's kind of what it was like for Kyrie Irving. And once again, every player wants to be seen. They want to be validated. When Kyrie was in Cleveland, he didn't get the right validation because everyone was talking about LeBron because LeBron was from Cleveland. But I would remind people that title that LeBron had in Cleveland, you don't win that without Kyrie Irving.
Right. Right.
You really don't. And Kyrie and being in Boston and being with the Brooklyn Nets, he realized that those were not perfect places for him. And Kyrie has since grown up. We all have grown up. Just think about, Alex Hardy when you were 16 opposed to now. I mean, you probably were making the best decisions then as you will do now as a father and as a husband. So that's where life has changed for Kyrie. And it's strange how when you have certain people in your life, you have kids, it just calms everything about you down. And we're seeing a different Kyrie than we've seen before. And I like this Kyrie because he's saying, okay, well, Doncic is the younger player, right? He could be the face of the NBA if they wanted to be. But I am the veteran. I've been in before. I know how to close, right? And this is just kind of, when I think about other sports and other players, you have to have guys who are closers. Those Yankees back in the day when they were winning titles, they had guys who were coming out of the bullpen to be closers for the Yankees to kind of submit that win. And
right. Except in 2004. Right. And 2001.
Yes, the Boston fan had to bring that out. So yes, you understand what I'm saying.
Shout out to our D-backs fans listening to us as well. I will bask in 2001 as long as I possibly can. And we'll switch over to Boston because Kyrie, obviously, with his history in Boston, and Kristaps Porzingis, his history in Dallas as well. It's fascinating to see kind of the changing parts and seeing how the better pieces or the teams found the better fits, I should say, with each of these critical pieces to their success. And so, of course, it's going to be emotional with Kyrie coming back to the Boston Garden for game one. And Porzingis' stay in Dallas was about just as long, but there are frustrations in New York and in Dallas with Porzingis unable to stay healthy. And that looms large for Boston now with his personal health right now, comparing the calf strain to what Kevin Durant sustained. And then he ultimately tore his Achilles. But I just, with those two stars being integral parts of well-oiled machines, with Boston having the best regular season record and Dallas arguably having the best playoff run, I'm wondering, Nick, where you think the rubber meets the road when these two teams square off.
Well, it's going to come down to two things for me. It's a defense as always and the supporting cast. I mean, both sides have all-star players, right? And we know what those players, Brown and Jalen Brown and Taysom,
Jason Tatum.
Jason Tatum. And
you're trying to say Taysom Hill. I hear you. I hear you, Sean Payton. I hear you.
Yes. Both of them, they have great players on both sides. And the idea is, okay, well, those second units and who's going to be able to make those defensive stops, because we've seen both the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics in games where they have large leads and then they have that large lead and then will lose that lead. So both teams have been in that situation. So it's going to come down to having a closer. Which group can close every single game? That's what it's going to be. And then when you look at Boston, they play more of a team concept. And you say, okay, well, when you think about their roster and the guys that they have, well, who's going to be tasked with guarding Kyrie night in and night out? And if you look at what Dallas Mavericks did against, Timberwolves, they forced the switch. They picked to get the matchups that they want to. And both of those guys, when you think about Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, they can get to any spot on the floor and they can score from anywhere. But I was hoping that this would be the match, because how are the Boston fans going to respond to Kyrie now? And how is Kyrie going to respond to the Boston fans now that they've already seen that chapter? Has he grown up enough where he's going to be able to block out that Boston noise? And I can tell you, man, Boston fans can be a pain in your ass.
In a pair of regular season matchups, Boston beat Dallas twice, 119-110 in January. Jalen Brown took the primary defensive responsibilities on Luka Doncic, who took 30 shots and scored 33 points. And their second meeting in March, following the trade deadline, so PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford were there for Dallas, but they hadn't quite gelled yet. The Celtics had 7 double-digit scores. This was the lone game Porzingis played. He missed the first matchup in January, 24-6-2, including 4 of 8 from 3. When I look at Boston, I see 4 premier defenders in Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum, plus you have the 2 all-defense guys in Drew Holiday and Derek White. Just as an aside, I'm incredibly frustrated that all defense went positionless because first team had 4 centers, like true centers, Rudy and Victor Wembanyama and Bam Adebayo and Joel Embiid, and then second team was like all guards. It's nonsense to me, frankly. I thought Drew Holiday was the best on-ball backcourt player. He should have been first team all defense. So if Drew Holiday is up for the matchup against Kyrie, it's all about limiting these guys' firepower. And Jalen Brown, I circle back to your comments about the Denver Nuggets and that fatigue. Only Magic Johnson has had more conference finals appearances before the age of 28 than Jalen Brown. 6 of his first 8 years in the league, the Celtics played deep into a conference finals. And in 2022 and now in 24, they're in the NBA finals. So that fatigue is wearing on him. He plays Team USA basketball as well. Like, you're just hoping, this is the National Football League all over. You're just hoping guys are 60, 70% going into these games. So I'm hoping the time off is beneficial. I hope Joe Mazzulla has been able to watch the town twice a day instead of his usual once every other day or on the week or on the flight for road trips. The man is obsessed. So I think you're absolutely right. This is the best matchup we could have hoped for out of the Final Four. And I'm sorry to your Denver Nuggets, including them as well. Dallas-Boston is where it is. And before I get to Nick, before we split, I just think it's worth mentioning. We talked about the Patriots dynasty and all the things to sort of skirt certain rules and get by and everything in the name of winning. Remember, the Dallas Mavericks were fined $750,000 to begin this year because they tanked at the end of last year in their final week of the regular season, most notably against the San Antonio Spurs team that was looking to draft Victor Wembanyama. And because of that, they missed the play-in. They end up drafting in the lottery, and they move up for Derek Lively. And look at the impact that he has had for this team getting to the NBA Finals. So I'm just saying, Nick, like, if it only costs you $750,000 to get the kind of player that puts you over the top, I think that's something that Mark Cuban and the governors there for the Dallas Mavericks would do time and time again. And I'm a Patriots homer, so I'm just going to point out when everybody else does it, okay? Got it? Nick, before we split, you sent this to me earlier today. Michael Finley, who's got a prominent role within the Mavericks organization after being an all-star for them for numerous years, he spots Luka Doncic. Again, kudos to the Mavericks. I didn't see too much popping bottles and goggles and going nuts because they're going to the finals. It's all business. There's still work to be done. And Luka's got his dad there with him. Flew in from overseas. They're chatting. Luka's enjoying a beer. Michael Finley gives him the pat on the shoulder, kind of takes the beer. Luka doesn't even know what's happening at the time. Nick, before we split, pro veteran move for Michael Finley to keep Luka on task, or is he helicopter parenting the Mavericks superstar?
No, this is a great OG type of move, even though Michael Finley is catching a lot of strays on social media as people say, well, that was very disrespectful. Because they say, well, 2 things that you don't take away or don't touch. You don't touch a man's hat and you don't take away a man's beer.
You hear that, David Tepper?
Yeah, I mean, look, the whole idea is that Finley realized the job isn't done. Yes, you did a great job, and that's what you were expected to do. And you just look at how Finley did it. It wasn't aggressive. It was cordial to let him know, a hand on the shoulder. I'll go ahead and take that. And you finish, go ahead and talking. But the biggest thing was, remember, this wasn't in the locker room setting, because there's a lot of things that happen in the locker room behind closed doors that most media fans are not privy to. Not to say that it's just kind of like Animal House or anything like that. But he realized there was a camera of some sort on Luka, right? And everything is about protecting the team, to protecting the image. And some may look at it as being a helicopter parent, but you could tell by Luka's reaction, one, he was like, wait a minute, what's happening? And then he was just like, whatever, man, and just kind of let it go and just went about his business. But for me, that was a big OG move and showed a lot of love to Luka, because you know how the media works. Anything that you see that you try to find to manipulate, what if, let's just say, the first 2 games against Boston, they lose and they lose big? Could you imagine that photo coming up? Well, Luka was celebrating all too early, right? Maybe he was a little too hungover. So Philly say, you know what, I'm going to step in, I'm going to help you out, and we just going to squash this.
Shout out social media for giving him the nickname Hookah Luka. We've seen him and Jokic enjoying some pipe tobacco, but he's my OG. He's Nick Ferguson. He's your OG as well. I'm Alex Hardy, and we're those guys, bringing you the latest from the National Football League and the NBA as well. I'm sure there's plenty more for us to discuss. I'm going to be wearing green all the next few weeks. Nick will be green with envy that his team isn't going for back-to-back championships. Nick, before we get out of here, what do you have to say for the people?
Well, as they would say, if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Like, rate, subscribe. Find us on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Peace, everyone.